This lesson is on distributive property. And before we go through the distributive property, I wanted to review some multiplication facts. These facts represent the multiplication facts of different signs, negative, same signs, positive. So when you're multiplying numbers, if the two numbers have different signs, your answer will be negative. If the two numbers have same sign, your answer will be positive. Where that comes into play in distributive property is if I was to get an answer of 6x plus negative 4, I would want to rewrite that as 6x minus 4. These two symbols next to each other can be replaced with one symbol. So in math, we always want to write things in the simplest way possible. So don't leave your answer as 6x plus negative 4. Rewrite it as 6x minus 4. Likewise, with these two symbols, if I had 6x minus negative 4 as an answer, I should rewrite that as 6x plus 4. So minus and negative is the same thing as plus. So these are the two things that people have the most issues with distributive property. Don't leave your answers in an unsimplified form. So here's some examples and we'll see how this works out. So in the first example, distributive property, a number next to parentheses means multiply. So all I'm doing is multiplying 4 times everything that's inside the parentheses. So I'm multiplying 4 times y and 4 times 2. So 4 times y is 4y. Bring down the plus sign. 4 times 2 is 8, and that's the answer. So distributive property involves multiplication, and you know that because a number next to parentheses means multiply. And you're just multiplying times everything inside the parentheses. Example number 2 is an example of distributive property where the number being multiplied into the parentheses has been placed on the right side. The commutative property of multiplication says you can change the order of multiplication. So for example, 3 times 4 is the same as 4 times 3. So I'm going to rewrite this by putting the negative 3 on the left side. You don't have to do this, but I find that most of my students feel more comfortable if the negative 3 is on the left side. So I'm going to move it over here. Now we're going to do the same thing we just did above. So I'm going to multiply negative 3 times t and negative 3 times 2. So negative 3 times t is negative 3t. A negative times a positive is a negative. I'm going to bring down the minus sign, so I'm just dropping this down. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Now this is where we run into what I talked about on the last slide. Don't leave your answer like this. Negative 3t minus negative 6 can be simplified to negative 3t plus 6. So the two symbols get replaced with one symbol. So negative 3t plus 6. Sorry, that's a terrible plus sign. On example number 3 here, it's the same thing again. I'm going to multiply negative 4 times 2x and negative 4 times 3. Negative 4 times positive 2x is negative 8x. Bring down the minus sign. Negative 4 times positive 3 is negative 12. Again, I have these two symbols next to each other. Minus a negative is the same thing as plus. So my answer is negative 8x plus 12. So make sure you don't leave your answers with two symbols next to each other. Two symbols next to each other in math can always be replaced with one symbol. So minus a negative is the same thing as plus. On the next example, I'm going to show you two different ways to think about this. The first way is you can think about just distributing in this negative sign. So if I bring the negative sign into the 2x, that becomes negative 2x. Bring down the plus sign. The negative sign into the 5 makes it negative 5. These two symbols next to each other, different signs, can be replaced with minus. So the answer would be negative 2x minus 5. The other way that you can approach this problem is you can place a 1 here. So I can rewrite this as negative 1 times 2x plus 5. You can always multiply by 1 because it doesn't change the value. So there's a 1 that's understood here that we don't write. You can write it. And then what you're going to do is multiply each of these by negative 1. You're going to get the same answer, it's just two different approaches to the same problem. So negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Bring down the plus sign. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Those two symbols can be replaced with a minus sign. So I get negative 2x minus 5. On number 5, I'm distributing in a fraction. So I want to multiply negative 1/3 times 2x and negative 1/3 times 9. To multiply a fraction times an integer, you want to change the integers into fractions by putting them over 1. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 1/3 times negative 2x over 1 minus 9 over 1. Now I can distribute these in here and multiply. I'm going to use two different colors here because I'm going to show this work over on the side over here so that it's clear to you what I'm doing. So negative 1/3 times negative 2x over 1. So I'm just going to write this over here so you can see what I'm doing. Remember, to multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. Numerators times numerators, denominators times denominators. So when I multiply negative times a negative, first of all, my answer is going to be positive. 1 times 2x is 2x. 3 times 1 is 3. So negative 1/3 times negative 2x over 1 gave me 2x over 3. And in algebra, we usually write this as 2/3 x. 2x over 3 is the same thing as 2/3 times x. Now I'm going to do the negative 1/3 times 9 over 1. So negative 1/3 times 9 over 1. If you know about cross simplifying, you could simplify the 3 and the 9 here. If you don't, you would just multiply straight across. You would get negative 9 over 3. 1 times 9, 3 times 1. I have minus negative 9/3. Couple things to simplify here. First of all, minus a negative is the same thing as plus. The other thing is 9 over 3 is the same thing as 3, because 9 divided by 3 is 3. So my final answer is going to be 2/3 x plus 3. So hopefully this has helped you out.